Hey y'all, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make these collapsible arch panel walls. There's a lot of steps and a lot of tricks and tips I've learned along the way, so I'm going to try to explain all of them as I can, and I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get into it right now. I'm going to start by showing you a couple different ways to cut out the arch, and then I will show you me cutting it out myself. So the first way is to make some sort of stick that allows you to just mark it with a pencil. So I put a hole here to put a nail in. And then I put a mark here at 2 feet over, put a pencil in here, you go around and that'll mark out your line. You can go all the way around. That'll mark out your line. And then you can just use a jigsaw and cut it out along the line. That's not the cleanest method. It's hard to cut exactly on the line, but that's what I did at first. The next method is to use some sort of router jig. This is the one I have. Basically, you'll put this in the center hole. Then you'll set this hole on top of that. And then put this along the edge and then start cutting it out. I'll show you how that works later on. And before I had one of these, I made my own, which this is basically this, but a handmade version. It doesn't work quite as well, but it does get the job done for cutting circles. All right, so this one's gonna be the 7-foot tall one. So we need to measure up 5 feet from the bottom. Because the radius you're cutting out is 2 feet, you'll wanna subtract 2 feet from your overall height and measure up that from the bottom. So for a 7-foot tall panel wall, you'll measure up 5 feet. I'm gonna use a straight edge. Measure 24 inches over. And in case this is slightly over 20 or slightly over 48, you measure from the other side just to make sure get the exact middle. Next, I'm going to center the jig here. We're also going to want to measure 5 feet up the side so we know where to stop. The number you measure up to on the side is equal to the number that is in the center. If we don't make a stopping point, then there's a good chance we'll overcut it, and then that'll ruin our piece, so we got to make sure we stop at the right spot. And then do the same thing on the other side. Mark 5 feet up. And put a mark on the side. I recommend hearing protection and possibly a dust mask. All right, so we set our router bit about 1/3 of the way through. You can set it whatever you feel comfortable with. You could set it up to halfway through if you wanted. You could just set it 1/4 of the way through. I'm gonna set it about 1/3 to make 3 cuts. This is the line that we do not want to go past that way, and the same one on the other side, we don't want to go past it that way. So we'll stop here and we'll start making our cuts. So I'm gonna turn it on and show you how it goes. Once you get to the other side, you can lower it down again. All right, it's time for the final pass. So I have my router bit set quite a bit, like maybe 3/16 of an inch below the wood on the other side. I made sure that none of my tables are underneath the cutting area because we don't want to cut into the table. And now it's time to do our final cut. Now that the shape is cut out, I'm going to sand down all the edges with 120 grit sandpaper. Next, you'll find the center of your piece of wood. For this one, it is 3.5 feet. But I'm going to double check. I use this clamp straight edge that I picked up from Harbor Freight to make a straight cut. All right, now it's time to cut it in half. All right, that's it for the panels. Now it's time to work on the legs. All right, so here's the back of an arch that I've already finished. I'm going to show you all the pieces before I show you how I make them. So we got this leg. We got the strip that the leg attaches to with the hinges. Then we have these little blocks that help everything line up so it doesn't tip over. Then we have these that hold it together. And then we got this piece here, which is a little bit different. So I'm going to show you how I make the legs, this piece, this piece, and this piece. So 5 different pieces in total. Here's a quick drawing of how I make the back legs. I'll have one piece that's 24 inches wide, and then however tall the bottom half of your piece is. So if it's 48 inches, it'll be up here. This is 3.5 feet, 3 feet, 2.5 feet, 2 feet. And you could cut off whatever excess you need or you don't need. Then you'll cut out this little area in the middle here. 3 foot or 3 inch space here, 16 inch spacing between here, then 4, 4, and 4. And then this piece over here is 6 inches up. So it doesn't have to be exactly like this, but this is what works best for me. For the legs I made, I used the offcut from one of the arches and did these measurements on it and just cut it off. It was not exactly how I made it in the drawing, but this is pretty much how it is. All right, so these are the 3 pieces that we need to make for each one. We need 2 of these for each one of them, 8 of these, and 9 of these. So these are each at a 30-degree angle, and they sit in like that. It'll all make sense in the future, but I'm gonna show you how I make these. All right, so this is how you're gonna set up your table saw to cut out these pieces. You're gonna set the angle to 30 degrees. You're gonna set the fence to 2.5 inches. And you make sure your blade is tall enough to cut this out. Then you'll run it through, flip it over, and do it on the other side. You will need 2 48-inch long pieces like this for each panel that you're planning on building. They will be cut down smaller after you cut them out. I just cut out a bunch at once because I'm actually making 3 different size panels. While your table saw is still set to 2.5 inches, set your blade to 90 degrees and cut out 3 more pieces. This will be what the legs attach to on the back of the arch walls. So next we'll make these pieces. So we'll set our table saw back to 90 degrees, or the 0 here. Then we'll set this to 1 3/8 inches. That way we can cut these other pieces that we just made directly in half. Now we're gonna cut out these little blocks. Just leave everything the same, but cut a bunch of strips with flat sides on both sides. I like to use this opportunity to use a bunch of tiny scrap pieces. Just make sure you're careful and don't cut your finger off. The next step to cutting these out, the long strips, I just set a block here at 8 inches. I'm gonna run it here, come down, chop it, knock that out of the way, do all of them like that. So here we go. I should mention for the beginners that the tool I'm using to cut these out is called a sliding compound miter saw. Next we'll set our stop block to 4 inches and cut out all of the flat strips. I forgot to film me cutting the 48-inch angled pieces in half, but you'll mark them at 24 inches and then cut them in half like this. Next you'll cut the long flat strips to the same length of each of your legs. Next we'll drill some holes in our 24-inch long angled pieces to make them easier to pull out. I'm using an 1 1/4 Forstner bit to drill the holes. This side is going to be facing out, so I usually drill with this side up so that if there's any tear out, it's on the back side and it's hidden. This mark is 2 inches from the top and 1 inch from either side. Then you can just repeat that process for the rest of the pieces. Next, I'll quickly sand the line I cut with my circular saw, just to make sure that none of the hairs get in the way. Next, I'll line up the cut edges of the arch wall and clamp them together. You can use whatever clamps you have available. Next, I'll find the center of the arch wall and make a line. This is where I will attach the straight piece that will attach the hinges to the leg. I just glue it down and use some 1¼ brad nails to nail it in place. Next, we'll attach the leg to the leg support using the hinges. You'll want to give it a little bit of space on the bottom, maybe about 1/2 inch, so that the whole thing can tilt back a little bit. You also want to make sure that the line you drew is in the middle and you don't put the leg on the opposite side of where you drew the line. Otherwise, it'll overlap and stick out past the edge of the bottom of your arch when it is laying flat. So I didn't measure where to put these hinges. I just guesstimated about 6 inches up from the bottom and 6 inches down from the top. Next, I'm going to show you how to do these pieces on the edge. It's a little tricky. It could be complicated a little bit. So you want to make sure you only do the top on the inside and nail the bottom on the outside so that they nest into each other. You don't want to nail them together, and so you just have to make sure you do them in that correct orientation. I just hold them in place on the board and then pick them up and glue where they need to be glued. But if you have a hard time doing that, you can always just mark which side needs to be glued so that you don't glue the wrong side down, because it is important that you do the right side. And then I just set them at an angle. It doesn't matter what the angle is. I don't know what it is. I just kind of guesstimate somewhere between, it's not quite 45, so probably around 30 degrees. And then about 1 inch from the edge. So you can kind of see here how they nest into each other. So if we push this and come over here, push this in. Now this is perfectly level here and it can't go back and forth this way and this way. So it nests into each other like that. So next I'm going to show you how I build this part. I measure down 12 inches from here and make a line, and then I put this in place. I did 10 inches over to here on this one, but on different sizes, like the leg might run into it, so you might have to adjust accordingly. But for most of them, most of the bigger ones, you can come over 12 inches down, 10 inches over, nail it, then make this one exactly parallel to that. So I usually mark a straight line here with a square and then put that in place. And then I'll show you from there. 12 inches down. So I measured 12 inches down, so this side is 12 inches from here. Then I just went over 10 inches to here and made sure it was square. So I made a line at 7 inches over. So this is straight. Glue and nail this. Then I'm going to use these 2 credit card things, but they're blanks, that I bought off Amazon. Just has smallest spacers, so there's some room for this to slide. I put this 1 inch down here, so I left 1 inch unglued there so I can butt up against here and the glue doesn't overlap. Move the spacers to this side, push them tight, push this tight up against here, and then glue and nail it. Push tight up against here. This piece here is overlapping this way, so it's nailed to this side, so I'm going to nail this to this side. Do this one the opposite way. I'm using 1¼ inch 18 gauge nails. And then we did all of the exact same stuff on the other side. All right, so this is how it is when it's all done. These just come in and out. You can pull them out, and then just keep it from tipping over. Pull that one out. If I pull this one up, gently, it holds it from tipping over temporarily, but if you push on it, it'll fall over. These, because a lot of these overlap, that's what helps hold it into place temporarily, and the fact that there's a little gap there, so it leans back on this back leg. That allows it to stay in place until you put the legs in. Not the legs, these pieces. All right, we're all done. One last thing. I do like to put a sandbag down here to keep it from having to tip over. It does help a little bit. If it's going to be really windy, it's going to be outside, you might want to put multiple of these. You can paint these. I've painted them, I've stained them. I'll show you some pictures of that here now. And that's it. If you like this video, please let me know. Please like the video, please subscribe, and if you want to see what I build next, definitely subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I will try to answer them. There's probably a better way to do this. This is just the way I do it. It works for me. And yeah, if you have any suggestions, let me know. And otherwise, have a good day. Bye!